Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. Today's topic is about experimental design. So what is experimental design? Experimental design is a setup to examine the possible cause and effect relationship among variables. So if you want to determine what are the factors that affect the dependent variables, so we do the experimental design. So these are some basic terminologies that we use in experimental design. Experimental group, is the group where you receive the treatment, where control group is the group where there is no treatment being given. Repeated measure, we repeat the treatment on the same samples, and then we read the output. Replication, reproduce the experiment and get the similar result. So this is some of the terminologies I hope that you are familiar with. And then we have a placebo effect. Placebo effect, the fact that the respondent are confident that a treatment will positively affect them. They tend to react to a control treatment where the treatment there is no drug, for example sugar pill. Placebo effect ni lebih kurang macam contohnya you bagi dia ubat tapi dia bukanlah ubat, dia cuma gula je, katakan untuk pesakit, katakan dia demam. So you bagi dia, you kata dekat dia yang ni Panadol, but actually it's not the Panadol, dia cuma gula-gula sirap je untuk dia. Tapi bila dia makan, disebabkan dia fikir itu adalah Panadol, dia rasa lepas dia makan dia sihat. So actually perasaan dia sihat tu is not because of the treatment. So that is a placebo effect lah. Dia rasa lepas makan ubat tu. So that is a placebo effect. Double-blinded, neither the experimenters nor the subject are aware of the subject group status. So this will eliminate the possible that the experimenters will treat the placebo group differently from the treatment groups. So double-blind ni maksudnya you as an experimenter, you pun tak tahu sama ada you punya subject ada control group or experimental group. So double blind. And then dia pun tak tahu. They also do not know whether they are treatment group or they are a control group. Sama ada dia tu memang betul-betul diberi Panadol ataupun dia dibagi pil sirap katakan. So that is a double blind. And then Hawthorne effect. Hawthorne effect is a tendency for people to change their behavior if they are aware that they are being observed. So this is quite common in experimental analysis. So bila kita buat eksperimen, so bila orang tu tahu dia diuji, they are being tested. So they tend to change their behavior. So that they can meet or achieve the experimental outcome. So in experimental design, so we have the independent and the dependent variable. So the independent variable is the factor that is manipulated in an experiment. So example, the treatment, the method and etc. For example, you can apply different treatment. You can apply a different method to a different situation, to a different type of group. So that is under independent variable. This factor can be manipulated. So kita sendiri yang decide lah kita nak buat dekat group mana. Treatment apa yang kita nak kaji. What type of method that you want to tested on our subject. For example, let's say saya nak tengok ada beza ke tak ada beza. Group M dengan group T. Katakan group M saya bagi extra coaching. Okay, group T saya tak ada bagi extra coaching. Okay, so I want to see is there an the coaching given is considered as the independent variable. We can manipulate. Suka hati saya lah, saya nak pilih group M ke, saya nak pilih group T ke, ataupun saya pilih at random. Okay, which group to have extra coaching just to see the impact. Okay, the dependent variable is the response as a result of the manipulation. Katakanlah tadi saya nak buat comparison method, of coaching between these two groups. So the output actually is the result lah, or the exam score. So based on the exam score, how does it changes with the interference or the factor that being manipulated. Kadang-kadang it also happen that bila ada interference pun tak ada beza result pun. Extraneous variable or also called as a confounding or intervening variable. So kalau you baca dekat dalam journal ke, buku ke, confounding, intervening, that is also called as the extraneous variable. Actually is the variable or factors that cannot be controlled. Variables other than treatment that differ between groups. For example, in a medical setting, when patients take other medication, the extraneous variable in addition to the medication tested. Contohlah, katakan nak tengok the effectiveness of the katakanlah ubat kencing manis contohnya, diabetic pills. Tapi at the same time, the respondent also consume other medication. So dia ada ambil ubat darah tinggi ke, dia ada ambil ubat untuk buah pinggang ke. It will affect the effectiveness of the pills that we want to test it. So the effect of the other treatment, so that is what we call as the extraneous variable. Sama jugalah contohnya macam kalau kata saya nak tengok ada effect or not on the certain diet before and after. Is it the diet itself can reduce the weight or not, is effective to reduce the weight or not. Kalau based on the diet itself, ada beza tak dengan let's say they do the diet and also they do the exercise. So exercise is considered as the extraneous variable. It's considered that the variable is considered as a factor that affect the changes in the output, but that is not the main factors that you want to study. So how to minimize the extraneous variable? So there are two ways on how to minimize the extraneous variable. So first is by doing matching. Second one is randomization. So what is a matching? Matching means block or stratifying into similar subject according to age, working experience, gender, location, and so forth. So kita letak according to block lah. So it can reduce the variability, and then we can see the true effect. So we stratified according to age level, according to working experience, gender male and female, according to the place or the background of the respondent. Randomization, so we randomly assign subject from each subset into the test, and control group will strike a balance. So randomization will reduce we reduce the extraneous effect where it can reduce to determine the effect of the true relationship between independent and the dependent variable. Okay, so field experiment versus lab experiment. Okay, so when we do the experimental design, so there are two types. Okay, so the first one is the field experiment. Field experiment where the experiment is done under natural setting. Okay, where there is very minimal interference. So field experiment ni contoh kalau you distribute questionnaire to the random respondent. Okay, you do not you don't have any interference, okay, or very minimal interference, or through observation. Contoh kalau observation, you want to see their behavior. Okay, so based on the through experiment, okay, or under natural setting, okay, how the respondent behave. Okay, so it is under field experiment. Okay, so while lab experiment, okay, is done under artificial setting. Okay, so you dah set up siap-siap dah. Okay, for example, you dah tahu dah, okay, there is a difference, okay, between performance between male and gender. Okay, so you already decide the experiment conducting according to the gender. Okay, and then you also suspect that the outcome, okay, is affected by the location of the sample selected. Okay, so you decide, okay, to set the respondent for different location. Okay, location A, location B, and location C. So you do the experiment under artificial setting. You already decide, okay, the factors. And then under lab experiment, moderate or excessive interference. Okay, so you interfere the experiment. So this is mainly due to the manipulation of the variables during the process of the experimentation. So when you decide, okay, the factors that cause the relationship between dependent and the independent variable, so you do some manipulation. So this is considered as experiment under artificial setting, or this is a lab experiment. Okay, so there are two types of validity in experiment: internal validity and external validity. So this validity is relate to the lab experiment and field experiment. Okay, internal validity: to what extent does the research design permit us to say that the treatment caused a change in the outcome. Okay, so meaning that when you do experiment under field experiment, okay, under natural setting, okay, so we want to see, is it true that, okay, the x, okay, the factors that we studied affect the variable of y. Is there any other variable, okay, or is there any confounding variable that affect the dependent variable? So how to do the internal validity? Okay, so we will discuss later. So we can measure through efficacy studies. Okay, so we validate, okay, the internal validity by conducting the lab experiment or using the clinical trials. Okay, while the external validity, okay, is the opposite of the internal validity. Okay, external validity is to what extent are the results found in the lab setting transferable or generalizing to the real world. Okay, remember when we do the lab experiment, so there are some factors that we try to control. Okay, for example in terms of gender, ataupun let's say kalau you buat in science lah, okay, let's say you want to study the effect, you want to see the growth, okay, of a plant, for example. Okay, so there are many factors that contribute, okay, to the growth of the plant. So you set up, okay, the lab under artificial setting. Okay, so let's say a type of soil, okay, and then the location, the wind, okay, the fertilizer. So these factors under lab setting, you can see that the possibility that there is an effect. But how does, okay, under lab setting can be transferred into the real world? Okay, sebab you dah buat dalam under artificial setting, tapi dalam yang keadaan yang sebenar, adakah the plant, okay, growth as what being expected under artificial setting? And then we can measure, okay, through effectiveness studies conducted in natural setting or in a field experiment. Sama lah, maksudnya kalau you nak tahu sama ada the external is valid, okay, so you do the result under artificial setting is valid or not, then you conduct the research under natural setting. Okay, so dah buat dekat lab and then you try pula tengok dalam keadaan yang sebenar whether is it true or not. Okay, so what are the factors that affect the internal validity and the external validity? So I will explain first the factors affecting the internal validity. Okay, first is the history. Okay, events or factors that have an impact on the dependent variable relationship might unexpectedly occur, okay, while the experiment is in progress. Okay, for example, natural disaster, political changes, okay, and so forth. Okay, remember, internal validity ni actually you do the experiment under natural setting. So you nak tengok sama ada dia under natural setting lah. Okay, so under natural setting biasanya the possibility ada natural disasters. Okay, katakan you tanam pokok, tiba-tiba ada banjir, okay, ataupun you tanam pokok, tiba-tiba ada kebakaran and so forth. Okay, or let's say you want to study about political view, for example. Okay, tapi tiba-tiba ada berlaku political changes. Okay, so that will affect the outcome in the relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. Okay, and then events affect participant attitudes and behaviors. Okay, such that it becomes impossible, okay, to determine whether any change on the dependent measures is due to the treatment or the historical event. Okay, so when there is an event happen, okay, for example, let's say you want to study about the effectiveness of the diabetic pills, for example. Okay, kadang-kadang kita dah tahu dia tu ada diabetic daripada kecil lagi. Okay, so when we put a treatment, sometimes the treatment doesn't work, not because of the treatment itself, but because of the history. Dia memang dah ada prolonged diabetes, for example. Okay, ataupun another example, the growth, okay, the growth of the plant, for example. Okay, so kita dah tahu tempat tu memang dah ada selalu banjir contohnya. Okay, so the event, okay, or on that place, okay, or on the place that we want to apply, okay, to the under natural setting, okay, might not be the result might not as what supposed to be in a real situation. Okay. Maturation, okay, subject change during the course of the experiment. Okay, so this is quite common lah. Okay, when you do the research under natural setting. Okay, so both permanent changes such as physical growth and temporary ones like fatigue, okay, provide natural alternative explanations. Thus, they may change the way a subject will react to the independent variable. Okay. So sometimes when we do the experiment, the respondent tend to be bored, okay, or fatigue, or can be changed naturally over the time. Okay, so upon conclusion of the study, the researcher may not be able to determine if the cause of the discrepancy is due to time or the treatment. Okay. And then kadang-kadang macam saya kata tadi lah, okay, penyakit tu kadang-kadang dia boleh cure, okay, it's not because of the treatment itself, okay, kadang-kadang sebab masa, okay, makin lama makin dia makin katakanlah kita tengok dia diabetik dia dari kecil, okay, so makin besar, so bila dia makin lama jaga makan, and then not because of the treatment, okay, but not because of the pills or the medication, okay, but because of the other factors, okay, it can be due to time factors. Okay. And then testing, okay, repeatedly measuring the participant may lead to bias. Okay, so kadang-kadang when we do multiple or multi or repeatedly measures, okay, so the respondent tend to give a different answer. Okay, for example, kalau you bagi soalan questionnaire kan, okay, you repeatedly ask the same question to the respondent, okay, so there's a possibility that it will lead to the bias, and also the bias also is based on the time itself. Kadang-kadang ada beza kalau you tanya soalan pagi dengan petang. Okay, you tanya dia hari ni dengan besok pun there's a possibility that you will get a different answer. Okay, so that is the factors that can affect the internal validity. Okay, and then the instrument used, okay, the changes in the instrument, observers, okay, or scorers which may produce changes in outcome. Okay, kadang-kadang instrument yang kita pakai pun, okay, questionnaire, okay, ataupun orang yang pergi hantar questionnaire tu pun, okay, will affect the internal validity. Okay, kalau contohlah student A dengan student B, okay, there is a difference, okay, in the outcome. Kalau student A yang pergi tanya dia, okay, tak sama dengan student B yang pergi tanya, okay, the respondent, okay, so the changes in the instrument can affect, okay, the internal validity. Okay, selection bias. Okay, the biases which may result in selection of comparison groups. Okay, and then random assign of group membership control this trait. Okay, selection bias ni when we try to choose our respondent according to our needs. Okay, kadang-kadang kita nak pilih kita punya respondent tu, kita bukan pilih secara random. Okay, kita pilih, kita rasa macam oh dia ni boleh jawab soalan, ataupun we think that it's easy to choose this particular person to be our respondent. Okay, so therefore you can use the random assignment of group membership to control, okay, this trait. Okay, mortality, okay, the loss of subjects due to dropouts. Okay, sometimes especially kalau you ada buat apa repeated measure ataupun ada buat kita panggil as a retrospective study. Okay, where you need to take the measurement repeatedly. Maksudnya hari-hari kena ambil bacaan. Okay, katakan contohnya nak tengok dia punya bacaan blood pressure contohnya. Okay, for 1 year. Okay, tapi and then hari-hari every day. Tapi baru 10 hari tiba-tiba dia punya subjek tarik diri, okay, ataupun dia punya subjek meninggal dunia, okay, due to the other causes lah. Okay, so the factors can affect the internal validity. Okay, kadang-kadang tiba-tiba alamak dia meninggal dunia, adakah sebab kita bagi dia medication yang tak betul kan, baru 10 hari, and then you afraid that okay the effect okay of the treatment will affect to the others respondents. So so you might consider want to stop the experiment. Okay, ataupun pokok contohnya. Okay, you want to see the growth of the plant. Okay, tiba-tiba pokok tu mati. Okay, due to the unknown reason. Tiba-tiba je tak ribut, tak apa tah ni kan. Okay, so that is the factors that affecting the internal validity. Okay, so the next one, factors that affecting the external validity. Okay, external validity, okay, let me remind, external validity ni research or experimental, okay, under lab setting. Okay, so under artificial setting, so you nak tahu sama ada benda ni akan berlaku sama tak under natural setting. Okay, so the factors affecting internal validity, okay, reactive effect of testing. Okay, subject behave less naturally due to the fact that they are being studied. Okay, macam saya kata tadi lah. So kalau kita tahu, okay, if we know that we are being tested, so the respondent may not behave naturally. Okay, ataupun kalau kata you buat eksperimen dekat pokok pun, okay, kadang-kadang because of the interference, okay, so the subject might be react, okay, according to the interference being given. Okay, remember kalau under lab setting kita ada interference dekat situ, so the testing, okay, will affect the outcome, okay, of the experiment. Okay, the second factor is the selection treatment interaction. Okay, selected treatment or comparison groups, okay, are more or less sensitive to the treatment prior to initiating the treatment or intervention. Okay, sometimes the group, okay, that we choose, is either more sensitive or could be less sensitive. Okay, so therefore we do not know whether the treatment is truly effective, or is it because of the intervention. Okay, sebab ada intervention then the effective lah. So that when we do this under natural setting, okay, dia tak effective as under lab setting. Okay, because under lab setting kita ada interference. Okay, so that bila ada interference, kadang-kadang dia ada bias dekat situ lah. Okay, reactive effects of experimental arrangement. Okay, so the condition of the study are such that the result are not likely to be replicated in non-experimental situations. Okay, due to the fact that subject know that they are participating in the eksperimen. Okay, ada setengah eksperimen, okay, kita tak boleh nak replicate under non experiment. Okay, for example, let's say you want to study about katakanlah you ada promote dua produk, katakan produk A and produk B. Okay, so you want to do a discriminant analysis. Okay, so yang mana satu orang ni akan pilih, dia akan pilih produk A ke ataupun dia pilih produk B. Okay, in certain cases, okay, we can do this under experiment. Okay, we ask the respondent, okay, to choose A or B. Okay, but under real or under natural setting, okay, it's very difficult to determine, okay, the choices, okay, of the brand. Okay, katakan kita katakanlah under natural setting, kita letak dekat supermarket, dia sebelah kiri, sebelah kanan. Okay, tapi ada juga brand-brand lain. Okay, so that's another factors. Okay, so there's a possibility that memang apa yang kita nak tu tak cannot be do under natural setting. Kalau under lab setting tu macam kita boleh tahu, okay, dia lelaki ke perempuan tu tak ada masalah, but under background of the respondent itself, umur dia berapa, and then ada berapa orang anak, okay, ada family dia ada berapa orang. Okay, under natural setting is very difficult. Kita cuma boleh tahu, oh, dia lelaki ke perempuan. Okay, but the rest, the other factors of choosing the brand, okay, cannot be done under non-experimental situation. Okay, multiple treatment interference. Okay, same research, participants are exposed to multiple treatment. Okay, so macam ya, sama jugalah. Okay, dia lebih kurang macam under lab setting, dia ada banyak treatment yang dia ambil. Okay, but in a real situation, dia cuma pakai satu saja. Okay, so therefore multiple treatment can affect, okay, the external validity. Okay, or masa dekat dalam under lab experiment, kita ada considered the other factors. Okay, but during the under natural setting, okay, dia mungkin dia ada pakai, mungkin dia katakanlah under lab setting, okay, dia ada satu treatment sahaja. Okay, but under natural setting mungkin dia ada banyak treatment. Okay, so it's a vice versa. Okay, so that is a factors, okay, that affect the internal and the external validity. Okay, so there are several types of experimental design. Okay, but in this case I want to highlight on this three main experimental design. Okay, so the first one is a quasi-experimental design. In the quasi-experimental design, okay, involve only post-test, okay, for the experimental and control group. Okay, for example here, let's say macam tadi lah, let's say you want to study the effectiveness of the diabetic pill. Okay, so experimental group memang you bagi betul-betul lah diabetic pills. Okay, and then the control group you bagi dia pil sirap tu. Okay, and then you want to see is there any difference or not. Okay, whether is it effective or not. Okay, so you do the comparison between experiment and the control group. Okay, but you only do this for the you only do the experiment for post test. Okay, so this is a quasi experiment. Okay, ataupun contoh lain, okay, another example, the performance, for example, okay, between group M dengan group T contohnya. Okay, without your knowledge, okay, saya ada bagi extra coaching, okay, to the specific group. Okay, so saya tak tengok markah sebelum, saya cuma ambil markah masa hujung semester nanti. Okay, so saya ambil markah group M dengan markah group T. So is there any difference or not? Okay, treatment the experimental group and the control group. Okay, control group maksudnya saya tak ada bagi extra coaching. Experimental group saya ada bagi extra coaching. Okay, so the treatment effect is equal to inilah, okay, O1 minus O2. Okay, so the second type of experimental design is a true experimental design. Okay, so true experimental design include both treatment and control group. Okay, so dia ada pre-test dengan post-test. Okay, so we record the information before and after the experimental group is exposed to the treatment. Okay, so untuk eksperimen pun, untuk eksperimen we have the pre-test and the post-test. Okay, for control group also we have the pre-test and the post-test. Okay, so the good thing about the true experiment, okay, we can see the effect before and after, okay, for each group, experiment and control group. And then we can see the true effect, okay, by computing the O2 minus O1 minus O4 minus O3. So this, you can see the interaction effect, okay, because it measure the difference before and after, and then the difference between experimental and the control group. Okay, so the next one is the Solomon for group design. Okay, Solomon for group design is to overcome the external validity weaknesses, okay, caused when pretesting affect the subject in a such way that they become sensitized to the experimental variable and they respond differently the unpretest subject. Okay, ada setengah respon kita punya subject, they react differently after and before. Okay, and then ada yang setengah tu after tu memang dia ada effect but does not depends on the pretest. Okay, so they are respond differently, okay, on pretest subject. Okay, so we can do the Solomon for group design. Okay, actually dia sama je, is most likely the true experimental design. Okay, cuma kita ada lagi satu part, okay, where we have the experimental group and control group where we do not record the pretest and pretest. Okay, we only record the post-test score. Okay, so in this case, okay, we can see the effect, okay, before and after for the experimental group, which is O2 minus O1. Okay, and then the effect before and after, before and after, okay, for the control groups. Okay, and then O5 and O6, okay, and the post test, okay, for experiment and the control group. Okay, and also we can also get the treatment effect of O5 and the O3. Okay, the post test for the control group. Okay, O5 is the post-test of the experimental group and the pre-test, okay, for the control group. And we can also get the similar, the treatment effect, okay, before and after according to the experiment and the control group. Okay, so there is a Solomon for group design. Okay, so I guess that's all for now. Okay, thank you.